So it looks like we are currently live. This is another just casual chat today. I have Bunny joining me. Do you want to introduce yourself?
For sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Mauricio Trujillo, also known as Bunny. I'm the founder and CEO of Search on Dora.
So do you consider yourself a non?
I consider myself pseudo-anon in a sense that if people want to know who I am, they'll find out. I like to be able to still, walk into a room and not have someone immediately go like, "Oh my God, that is Bunny. Can I pitch you this project?" Or "I have this chain. Can we integrate your chain?" For business purposes, I guess it can be very good, but then for day-to-day life purposes, sometimes it's best to not walk into a party and then get immediately pitch stuff. So pseudonym is good.
Yeah, I definitely feel your pain there. I mean, when I go to conferences, my social interactions just quickly burn me out. Like when I get to an event, I'm really excited to be there at 1st, and then I end up talking to so many people because like you said, when you're known online, you just got a lot of people coming up to you, and it does become exhausting. Sometimes you just want to chill.
Yeah, no, it's very much I feel like it's a byproduct. It's for better or for worse, people get to know us and people start appreciating all the work that we do online, which I think is ultimately what is the beauty of both online and also crypto products, right? That regardless of your anon or non-anon status, people still value and see the merit on your work. And if that work can speak for itself, that's great. If that work can speak for itself and also get attached to our own personal brands and identity, then that's how we also end up with a lot more friends, but also getting burned out after conferences.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things about this space is that there are so many like really well-known anons that are like very well respected and that have contributed just like a lot, and no one really knows who they are. But I think like in DevRel specifically, this has nothing to do with like our conversation, but I've always wondered like if you wanted to be a very successful DevRel, I always felt like it would be really challenging to be in a non-DevRel because like you are out there like teaching people, talking to people, and essentially like the face of your product. And not that it cannot be done, it can definitely be done, but I just feel like it would be harder to do that maybe.
Yeah, no, I'm actually. Have you ever had an experience using a VTuber at all?
No, I don't even think I know what that is, to be honest.
It's a virtual avatar. A lot of how to say, like, especially in Asia, a lot of Twitch streamers were using virtual avatars instead of their own personal profile pics. There's even funny enough, a really famous Latino VTuber. I think he's Colombian, but of course he uses the avatar of an anime girl on Twitch streams. But he doesn't do that, bro. I mean, he makes memes and also salsa lessons. So that's how he's teaching salsa, by being an anime girl and dancing to salsa. So maybe we'll see the first VTuber DevRel influencer at some point.
Yeah, that would actually be that would be really sick, and it would also be a cool just like differentiating thing just to do. I wonder, like, I'm for sure in the future at some point there will be people that we just never ever know who they really are because they're able to kind of like simulate themselves forever. I don't know.
Yeah, the banks. I will bet that there will be a Banksy of DevRel at some point within the next decade.
So, what has been your most favorite story or thing happening in the crypto industry in the last like couple of days, couple of weeks, couple of months? Did you see the hack yesterday with Solana?
Today actually,
Or was
no.
it today?
What happened?
No, I think it was yesterday. It was this. It was Pump.Fun.
Oh yes. I saw the Pumped Up Fun hack. I think that my favorite part of that was Mert breaking down the hack and being like, "Oh, like 2 million were hacked from Pumped Up Fun," which is about like 2 days of revenue for them. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I will say there's a lot of companies and also DeFi protocols that have been hacked for even while still producing no revenue. So I think it's a little bit interesting that at some point there was this ethos within crypto of, oh, let's first focus on adoption. Let's first focus on distribution. Let's have no fees, any semblance of, and let's have zero financial friction to start using our products, right? But then I think that despite all these hacks and whatnot, it does prove that there's been definitely a tide shift on, let's actually make a product that is self-sustaining and a product that can allow the core team to then just continuously iterate and even have a, how to say, an emergency budget that, hey, hacks can happen, software is just something that can break at any point in time, so you might as well even prepare yourself for that if it's going to happen at some point, right?
Yeah, like going back to Mert, he's one of my favorite people because he's very pragmatic. He's like really, really bullish, and he's shilling and talking about Solana all the time, but he's also very critical of things that happen. So like you end up trusting him because he's not just out there ignoring all of the bad stuff. And yeah, he articulates stuff really well. And I did see, him kind of talking about it and breaking that down, and that was like great to see someone that understood everything and was able to kind of cut through all the noise and the chaos at the time. People were trying to kind of like make it a bigger deal than it was or a smaller deal than it was, and it was kind of crazy just to watch. And then another big narrative this week, it seems to be, is like people that are like mainly investors or like influencers basically talking about ETH in like a negative light. I don't know if you keep up with that conversation. That seems to come and go, like different ecosystems and protocols, they go through their hype cycles, and it feels like this week has been like a downside for Ethereum, or maybe it's just the people that I'm following.
Yeah, I think that, no, I very much agree. I feel like it's a little bit interesting. I feel like I've started chatting a lot more with, in one way or another, I started running into a lot of people that are either currently part of the Ethereum Foundation or were previously part of the Ethereum Foundation. And it was really fascinating to actually see how that social graph from core Ethereum developers or core Ethereum contributors eventually diffusing into either large DeFi protocols, large even NFT marketplaces, or even, of course, other rollups. Because who are you gonna want to hire if not the people that were able to build one of the very? Who would you rather hire if not the people that built a very successful L1 for building another really successful L2, right? That can, of course, also evoke all of the ethos of decentralization, infinite garden, positive sum games, and whatnot. I think something that became very clear to me, especially this past year, was that even though I and also a lot of my, let's say, inner circle, proximal circle to me, were very critical of Ethereum's approach to laissez-faire on chain development, right? Like, let's see what happens and let's leave Ethereum as it is. Let's keep on improving it slowly and whatnot. This was still a very intentional approach to allow for the flourishment of an experimentation of L2s. And I don't think that every other innovation that we've had within the Ethereum ecosystem will have happened if Ethereum will have been too dictatorial as to what needs to happen on the roadmap. That does not imply, however, that, let's say, something I do appreciate about Solana is that they have a very clear roadmap and a very clear, cohesive team that allows for constant iteration across a single vertical of development, right? And if that vertical of development works, of course, they're just going to have way faster development speed, iteration speed towards that end goal. However, as it is with tech, sometimes you want to explore many verticals of development instead of just one. And I think that is something that Ethereum did get right.
Yeah. And I think also it's like all the people that are, like, not all of them, but a lot of the people that are on Twitter that are like influencers or key opinion leaders, or they're kind of like getting paid in some form or fashion from these other protocols to basically be like their spokesperson. It's easy to kind of like it's easy to leave out the nuance of all of this stuff in terms of when you talk about Ethereum specifically. Yeah, Ethereum is very slow moving. It's not a performant network. It's expensive. But when you look at the Ethereum ecosystem, it's actually doing extremely well. I mean, when I looked at Base recently, I've been keeping up with everything they've been doing, but I went to Base's Twitter feed and just started going through all of the projects that were building there. And there are more useful projects building on Base alone than any other protocol that I've seen, or I would even go as far to say as all the other protocols combined, when it comes to actually people building useful applications. And that's what it's all about. Like, what is all of this infrastructure there for if people aren't going to be building apps? Um, Solana obviously is having a lot of usage, and it also has a great developer ecosystem growing. But I think a lot of the throughput, that's a lot of the interactions on Solana are purely speculative. Like Pump.Fun has helped it a lot, and there are a lot of people probably building more like real world use cases like social and gaming. But in practice, most of the transactions like happening there are not that. But I think with Base, you're actually starting to see a lot of real cool things that people are building that I would use and that the average person would probably use. So when people talk about Ethereum, they should be realizing that it also encompasses the OP stack, including Base, and it encompasses ZK Sync, including now Lens and all these other different protocols that are going to be building there or are building there. All these roll-up stacks, like you literally have like hundreds or possibly even thousands of networks with builders there when you talk about Ethereum. But I think a lot of them are just so focused on the price. It's like when you have a market cap as large as Bitcoin, it's not going to fluctuate insanely like a lot of these smaller cap networks. So I wonder if people just don't realize that or something.
Yeah, I think something I realized now after having a few. So like I think recently maybe you also saw the launch of Yap V2, right? I started chatting with also because Dora has been growing a little bit more rapidly lately. There's been a lot more talk about like, oh, when token, and we'll touch on that at some point. But Yap being a side project that then ended up having a token now, I realize how much more people start attaching the value of their own work to a liquid product such as tokens. And then I started chatting with a lot of other founders, especially with the founders of other infrastructure projects that we work with. And every time they've all been in crypto for a minute now, and every time they've gone through a token generation event, I think that's something that really leaves some mark on people's minds. It's very interesting to see how the entire market can have a very opinionated view and a vehicle by which they can express that opinion and how that can make someone feel about their work, right? It's very different to be like, okay, I value my work. You wake up, you log in, you clock in, you lock in, whatever you want to call it. You do your work, you end up the day, you feel very rewarded. And then if you go and at any point in time, you check the price of that, they're like, oh, okay, the market didn't value my hard grind days of work today, right? And
Yeah.
I think people, especially when you're like constantly building an ecosystem, of course, like I think it was very admirable to have people build so aggressively on Solana during the bear market. Even if a lot of usage now is speculative, I mean, they pulled it off, right? That was very hard. And now, especially through every single bear market that Ethereum has undergone, it's very admirable that we are where we're at now as well. Like,
Yeah.
it's insane. Like, I think we've done our fair share of bear markets now, and I think that we're a little bit more used to it. However, it's still very tiresome every time it happens.
Probably
Yeah.
the most impressive thing I've witnessed since I joined this space is kind of like the Solana comeback, that everyone was just like talking so much shit about Solana during like 2022, early 2023. People were like leaving, like removing their products elsewhere, like essentially declaring it dead. And then it like roars back. And so many people, like you said, were just like completely nonstop building with conviction during that time, you cannot like give enough respect to those people and appreciation for that community. And if you were trying to find somewhere to build right now, then you should consider Solana, mainly. Like that would be one of the top reasons why. It's that if you have a group of folks that are going to stick around through the good and the bad times, that's kind of where you want to be building. You don't want to be attached to people who are in it only for the hype or during the hype, because they don't have conviction for, for whatever reason. They're just maybe attaching themselves to the narrative. But you mentioned Dora, which is kind of one of the main reasons I wanted to bring you on, just to talk about Dora. But before you talk about Dora, do you want to give an intro of like how you got into the space and what led you to build Dora, and then you can kind of talk about what Dora is?
For sure. So a lot of how I got into the space was primarily just through academic curiosity. I'd say a lot of my career up until then had mostly been focused on just like research and academia. In uni, I was primarily focusing on social experimental psychology. One of my professors was this guy who was very much a leading figure within that field. He also got me to be a lot more interested, especially on the more experimental side of things, of psychology, which of course is very tied to statistics. There's a very heavy statistics portion of it. He very heavily encouraged me to start very early on exploring and playing around with a lot of databases. So one of his major examples that I remember until this day is to find a very large, constantly generating and publicly accessible database, just to quickly iterate on different statistical theses that one may have. One of the answers to that was actually blockchain at the time, and I was already familiar with it in 2016. However, I decided to just prioritize helping pay for rent and helping pay for uni, so I went into markets. I came up with some of my own models for trading stocks, did that for a little bit, and then after I realized that one of them was very performant and consistent, I chatted with a few bankers. We went through the entire process of raising a fund based out of South America, and then from that point onwards, I just dedicated myself to doing that. I very much was like, okay, maybe I'm already busy enough doing this work. I'm meeting a lot of people on Twitter that were also quantitative researchers on this. I very clearly remember one of my friends publishing this paper. I quote tweeted, made a joke about it. She found it hilarious, and she was like, "Oh, this is so funny." Added me to a group chat, and then there were a lot of other quantitative researchers on that group chat. Amongst one of them was Tarun Chitra, and then I was like, "Oh wow, like there's a very fascinating person." We started chatting. I started traveling around the US, just meeting other asset managers. And when I came to New York, I was like, "Oh, who would like to hang out? Like, it would be nice to meet some people here." And I'd say that within a month, I had already met more people than I had met over the past 5 years, just as a proxy of me being on Twitter. Just because the entire community of crypto was just based out of here. It was such a vibrant community. I had never met such a passionate group of people in my life. And I just felt right at home in here. I started chatting with a bunch of them, effectively just like floated around the industry for like 6 months. And one of the things that became somehow just apparently very clear at the time, and this back in 2021, was that there was going to be a multi-chain future. What does that mean? That there's going to be a future in which there's going to be either several virtual machines or one major virtual machine that a lot of information is going to be standardized. However, there were no clear standards for how to access and query this information. At first, because of course I was coming from a trading background, I was primarily looking at, okay, what is a unified interface to access all this data, and can we use this data to just effectively for trading purposes? Afterwards, I realized that the golden age of online services went hand in hand with the golden age of search engine services. So effectively, goods and services haven't necessarily changed throughout their lifetime, but the delivery mechanisms, the ways in which these goods and services are distributed, those have changed. The rails under which we're able to express our opinions and fulfill these desires are very much going from IRL to online, and now from online to on-chain. Having that realization, I was like, okay, what is the one, let's say, search engine for on-chain products? And there was really nothing. There was no one single place that people could actually navigate towards different applications, being able to have one consistent web login experience. No one single place where you had all of your tokens, NFTs, and even something as simple as transactions just consolidated to one single ID. And I was like, okay, there's very clearly something that needs to exist. Chatted with a bunch of people, and that was one of the very first seminal ideas of Dora, of why should we use this one interface to access the entire world for trading if we can use one single interface to actually interact with new on-chain worlds, to actually get people onboarded into crypto and actually using applications, as you said, because that's ultimately what we want. There's no real, I think there's an interesting realization that we had over the past couple of years at Dora, which is that on-chain data is not really valuable in itself. On-chain data is valuable because of all of the context and metadata that gets attached to it, in the exact same way that, let's say, like software code in and of itself, not really valuable. What makes it valuable? The people around that ecosystem, people that actually engage with these products. And that is where we're like, okay, do we want a read-only product? Read-only products, there's really good analytics tooling in crypto. There's still a lot of work to be done there. However, the key differentiator on our end is that we don't want a search engine that is just for reading things. We want a search engine that is also a proper discovery tool and engagement tool for every new chain out there. If a new chain is launching and they want to reach Spanish, English, South Korean, and Mandarin-speaking community, we've localized Dora into all of these languages because, of course, searching is not something proper of one single locale, but the entire world is searching these goods and services. We should provide access to all of this.
Yeah. So what is the stage of Dora in terms of where it is today, where it will be maybe a year from now, and where it was maybe 3 or 4 months ago?
So I'd say 3 or 4 months ago, Dora was still in a stage of, actually, we're already doing quite well, I will say. We found this very interesting niche in which a lot of crypto products that care about UX are primarily NFT and gaming focused. So we actually ended up signing up a lot of chains that realized, okay, if the majority of our audience is going to be a consumer audience, then we also want to showcase an equally consumer-friendly explorer. We don't necessarily want to showcase them. I won't speak about competitors, but they don't want to showcase their users a developer-heavy block explorer, which makes complete sense. The higher you go up the stack, the less you necessarily have to care about showing someone input data, right? So now we are in a stage in which we've been signing up a lot of chains kind of on the background. We've been ingesting a lot of them into our backend. Indexing has become a very trivial problem to solve, I'd say, for EVM chains. And now we're just effectively trying to consolidate all these chains into we're consolidating all these chains into a single search engine, being able to integrate all different tokens, NFTs, and transactions back to a single EVM address with multi-chain profiles, have native account extraction and balance extraction. In practice, this means just having a lot of lists that say, okay, all of these USDC are the canonical USDCs across all these chains. It is very interesting to see how all infrastructure providers are effectively converging towards that, just for finally standardized crypto UX that doesn't feel fragmented across every single chain. But it's very interesting that these are hard problems. These are not problems that existed they existed years ago, but very few teams were very thoughtfully tackling them every single year. it's very fascinating to see how there's very much an implicit, how to say, there are implicit market leaders just because they took a very heavy tech bet a couple years ago. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, because they were like the first movers, everyone is using them, but they are, if you compare them to like what you've built, they're just not that great. I think like a good example of like little things that just get on my nerves. If I go to other block explorers that are not Ethereum L1 and I type in my ENS, it basically doesn't resolve my ENS, even though like ENS resolves to an EVM and wallet address, regardless if I'm on Ethereum mainnet. Like if I'm using Polygon, Block Explorer, or Base, or any Block Explorer, my EVM wallet address should probably resolve to my ENS, right? So when that doesn't happen, it just feels bad. I mean, there's like a million little things that just feel a lot better on Dora that I've noticed.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And actually, ENS is a funny example because we noticed that there's a lot of, I guess, shortcuts that other analytics and explorer toolings have done, in which, let's say, they may resolve the latest purchase ENS, not necessarily the actually primary address declared on ENS. So then there's a lot of these very silly things that, like I have 3 ENSs because people thought it was really funny to give me some ENSs and they just send them to my wallet. But I like the bunny account that is my one ENS. I don't want any other ENS to show up in every other website just because someone was like, oh, this would be a hilarious name for bunny. Right? Yeah. And then I'd say like where we're headed, and I think that it's interesting is that people don't necessarily care about. I think that as infrastructure progresses, a lot of these offers become very trivial. It's like, oh, you provide block confirmations. Okay, you can see block confirmations literally everywhere. What actually gets people constantly going back to Dora is more so, oh, can you let people bridge into my rollup through that single interface? Can you tell people that my rollup exists and use an infrastructure tool not only to confirm transactions, but also to actually get people into my ecosystem as a distribution mechanism? That is what's a little bit more fascinating to people. And I think that is the real, I guess, there's a lot of marketing and even distribution powerhouses on every single rollup. If you want to launch a DeFi project, maybe you want to go to a more DeFi focused chain as opposed to a NFT focused chain. And I think that being very heavily opinionated about the branding and also technical decisions within a chain actually leads to that, to fostering all that growth.
When you said that indexing is a solved problem or it's trivial at this point, does that mean that you all are essentially indexing and building your own indexers in-house? And that's become like, I guess, something that's just a commoditized, or there's just enough understanding of how to do that to where it's trivial to implement?
So it's become a trivial problem for EVM chains. And even I'll go as far as to say that it has to be EVM and not EVM compatible. What I mean by that is that I think and I think DevRel actually gets very good visibility into this, in which there are some ecosystem, being an L1 or even just like programming languages, that need to create all of this developer support for one ecosystem to then effectively just hope someone else out there will actually start using it, right? When it comes to infrastructure providers, I think they're one of the first movers into an ecosystem. And you can either, if you're a team building on crypto and you want to launch a rollup, you can either go the route of contributing to an ecosystem that already has really good developer support, right? If you follow the EVM standard, if you're using OP Stack, Arbitrum Orbit, Nitro, or Polygon CDK, or even Sovereign SDK now, which now is becoming another good standard for Bitcoin L2s or also Solana L2s. There's already enough infrastructure built there in which it becomes a very trivial problem to support indexing of these major standards. If you're building a whole new ecosystem, if you're building Move VM, if you're building a CK WASM VM, if you're building, there's a Lisk VM as well, or something like Stylus, then you are effectively hoping that at some point either your developer community or your core founding team is going to have enough of a convincing power into infrastructure providers to actually create a new standard within your ecosystem and finally solve that issue for the years to come. So I feel like now we've not solved, but we've gotten into a very good habit of, like, if you launch a rollup right now and you give me an RPC, and if it is truly EVM compatible, we could get it up and running on Dora within a couple hours, depending on, if it is truly a new rollup, couple hours. If you have launched a rollup, it's very successful, and you start producing a lot of data, then it'll take us maybe up to 1 week. It's a lot of, I say that a lot of the delays is just truly ingestion times. Like, the bigger and more successful your chain, of course, is going to take the longest to ingest.
Does Dora support Base right now? Base mainnet?
Internally, we do. We support Base mainnet, and we support like 5 OP stack chains, I think, internally. But that's right now awaiting for the big Dora 2.0 launch, which we've already hinted at. It's just we're releasing the chains one by one, week by week, and whatnot.
Got it. That makes sense. So when is the big announcements going to start happening?
I think depending on when this launches, it may have already happened, or in like maybe 1-2 weeks.
Nice. Yeah. Another quick question. You mentioned earlier, was it Yap or Yup? Or Yap?
Yap.
Yeah.
YAP. Yap. So Yap is actually a really funny side project. I got into this habit of, this year I realized that a lot of the things that actually relaxes me is constantly having side projects and hobbies. Yap was the result of, if you're familiar with AirChat, it was just like this voice native social app created by Naval. A few other people were also on the founding team, and then I was like, oh, new social app. It would be really funny if, as a social experiment, in interaction with the people, say, oh, drop your ENS on the comments below, or your CRX address.
Because they have to literally like spell it out.
Yes, they had to spell out their CRX address. And I was like, okay, let's do an airdrop. Let's launch this token. It's going to be Sybil resistant because you can only, of course, use your voice to be able to declare your ENS there. Sorry, to declare your CRX address there. And smart. On top of that, if someone was going to, bot AirChat, botting AirChat would have been a pain in the ass, quite frankly. It's just like a very troublesome thing. Like, you will have had to set up your own text-to-speech, have to set up a new phone number, have to link it to another social app, have to have at least one other person within your social graph sign up to be able to say that, oh, this person is a human. So then I was like, okay, first voice power Sybil resistant meme coin ever, right? We launched it on Base. Jab V1 was, I think it was a success. We got to like, we got a usage. We got like 150 something holders. And then this week we launched Jab V2, and we're just going to be experimenting a lot more with different now, because every single person on the Yap founding team, I guess, has also a lot of just like DeFi and meme project backgrounds. We're just going to be playing around with it a lot. Like, it's really funny how it ballooned into from, oh, this is a very silly project, into now there's an actual game being developed. Now there's like marketing stunts happening. There's a lot coming for it. It will be really funny by the time this also goes live. At least one of these projects is also going to be live.
How is AirChat doing, by the way?
I think AirChat has definitely stagnated for some time now, but it was really fascinating to be able to have a platform that, just like Twitter, you can quite literally voice your opinion into the world and just see who it resonates with. And something that was funny within the peak, I guess, the height of mania of AirChat was that a lot of people were like, "Oh, that's what Bunny sounds like," and then some of the people on AirChat, which was an entirely different social graph that I had than the one I had on Twitter, were able to even recognize me at events, being like, "Oh, wait, I know your voice," and yeah, and it was nice. I got a lot of compliments of being like, "Oh, I like your voice," and I was like, "Oh, that's very nice." No one, like, people say it's very different to tell someone I like your tweets and then to hear, "Oh, I like your voice." It feels somehow a lot more personable. And on top of that, I feel like at some point I got into this somewhat not argument, but debate about where value comes from in crypto with Naval. And I do think that if that argument would have happened or discussion would have happening on Twitter, it would have been a lot more heated and a lot more bombastic, because you get to do a lot, you get to play around with words a lot more heavily. But if it is on a voice-to-voice manner and the discussion tone turns rather serious, then there's a lot more. It's a lot more conducive to, oh, let's actually have a civil debate about this. And after that, he ended up being a little more pro. Well, not a lot more pro value being derived from social consensus instead of just being something fictitious and out there, I guess.
Yeah, I thought that it was very personal. Like air chat, when you interacted with someone there, it felt like a personal like interaction that was a lot deeper and more meaningful than Twitter. But it was hard for me to kind of get like used to using it, because it was an ordeal to interact, because I'm just not, even though I do a lot of like talking, it's just not as comfortable and easy just to type something. You put yourself out there, I guess, a little more. But last thing to touch on, it just seems like there's a lot of social networks out there right now, not only in Web3 but just in general, and more people are building and launching them every day now, with Lens and Farcaster being able to be a platform for that. What are your thoughts on Web3 social and kind of like where it's going? And, if you were going to build something today at the application layer, like where might you build, and that might close it out?
So I think that since Dora is now finally getting to a stage of being a more consumer heavy product, I started very heavily shifting. Um, there's definitely like two brains running Dora right now. There's the infrastructure brain that at this point in time, I have to admit, has become very procedural, which I guess is kind of what you want for infrastructure products, right? You don't want the person leading your indexing services to play around with your indexing, I guess, right? Of course, there's optimizations, but we leave that to our CTO. Stella's a great CTO. We have a wonderful team. Our VP of Engineering, Zach, and everyone, and also Luke, the person currently now also leading our API services. They're amazing. I really cannot. I feel very lucky to be working with them. They're awesome. But now, when it comes to the consumer side of Dora, the one in which I'm actually talking to a lot of our users, talking to a lot of the rollups that contract us and whatnot, I started noticing that there's a lot of, I guess, moonshot projects in crypto that are trying to not only create a new behavior, but even create an entire new vertical out of mildly existing behaviors in crypto, but they're still trying to define what a way of interacting with a product should look like. On that end, I'd say is, let's say I try Wirecast, I tried Lens, I tried Discover, which is also another social Web3 app on Solana. They effectively tried to emulate the experience on Twitter, but they very much lean hard into catering towards a specific type of audience that may not have as big of a voice on Twitter. So if anything, it felt like a more segmented social graph than before. And if you want proximity to that social graph, wonderful place to be. If you, let's say, I say that on my day-to-day life, and especially because a lot of it is work, and even IRL social life is very work heavy. I go on Twitter as a bit of escape to just shitpost, to just have very silly discussions. Every now and then I'll make a comment or even a shitpost about something serious that I'm very deeply passionate about, but I'll make it in a very lighthearted manner. Do I want to have very heavy technical discussions on Twitter or Forecaster or Lens or Discover? Not really, but that's only because I have that aspect of my social life already satiated. Then the one other consumer approach that I've seen is one in which you effectively riff off already existing behavior, um, and then just enhance it with Web3 incentives. Um, with that, I think, interestingly enough, Discover and I think now tipping became a really interesting behavior in crypto as well, right? With social products in which, oh, do you like this meme? People in crypto like memes. What else do people in crypto like to do? They like to send tokens to someone. So then tipping became a really heavy meta for a while. And I thought that was very interesting, as well as to, let's say, with Frentech, people like trading in crypto. So why not let them trade their perceived value of someone's social, um, yeah, so yeah, the perceived social value of someone's brand, right? So that felt very interesting to me. I think that the ideal crypto product for now is primarily one which leans a bit harder into just enhance the already existing behaviors and experiences in crypto with further crypto incentives. And that doesn't mean necessarily give them tokens, but give something for crypto native people to actually engage with something that they feel like they're actually using on-chain infrastructure beyond just abstracting it away. I think abstraction of the cumbersome part of crypto is great. Like, no one really enjoys scrolling through all the canonical USDCs to find the one USDC they need to use to pay for something. But people do enjoy minting with an USDC or a token that is on any chain. So I think that is where a sweet spot for a consumer product is.
Yeah, it just seems so much more challenging to build at the app layer right now, and I just have so much appreciation and respect for everyone doing that. So, it's a journey. Obviously, like you all have been building this for a while, and the polish is starting to really show. So, I just wanted to say, wish you the best of luck and congrats on whatever you've achieved so far. But I think that really excited about people building different things. Like you're building something new and different that no one's ever done before, and like if you have a vision for something and you're executing on that, then I think that you're going to be successful. So
Thank you. Greatly appreciate it. I also appreciate everything that you've done for the industry, really. Like, I think that it really shows when someone is truly passionate about what they're doing, especially with, I mean, you've very much been at so many places that we work very closely with. And I feel like every time we're working on something new, it's, your name pops up. So I also really appreciate everything you've done.
well, this has been a really good conversation, and I know you're a busy person, so thank you for your time and for coming on.
No, of course. Thank you. Have a good one.